Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from in this world. Welcome to Message to Movement, Winning at Being You. I'm your host, Coach Rogers. This is a space where we have real conversations with people who are using their voice, their experiences, and their purpose to create impact, not just for themselves, but for others. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Jeanille Rockett. We're going to talk about leadership, transformation, and what it actually looks like to win at being who you are without pretending or performing. If you're watching live, feel free to drop where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's get into it. Jeanille Coach Rockett is the founder of Conquer Your Ish in All Year EDU, where she helps leaders conquer their ish with clarity and purpose without sacrificing performance, people, or joy. With expertise in leadership development, marketing, content strategy, and AI, Rocky has spent the last 4 years working behind the scenes of multiple speakers' brands, helping them scale to 6 and 7 figures. After grossing 6 figures year after year through her consulting firm, she made the bold decision to put her own speaking business first, delivering transformational talks while also working with schools, organizations, and corporations on leadership development, culture resets, communication strategies, student leadership development, and parent engagement. And when she's not shifting leaders and communities, she's unapologetically a cookie monster who never turns down a good cookie. Coach Rocky, you are my third and final guest for Women's History Month. So I thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back and especially doing the month of March.
Yes, indeed. So for people who may be hearing your name for the first time, what's the story behind the work that you do today?
Absolutely. I will say I started in this business. I come from a strong corporate background. And so I did corporate training, and that meant that I was in development for programs as well as trainings across different companies. And I was like, you know what? I could do this myself. I can go out and do this myself. And so I did. I stepped out on faith. I started my own business probably about 10 years ago. And then through multiple different kinds of businesses, working with different, business owners as well as corporations, I made a decision like, hey, I really want to take my firm to the next level. And so you mentioned about AI. And so about 3.5 years ago, I became a certified prompt engineer. And I was like, I want to help make software, and I want to help, create workflows. And the schools, of course, needed them. Corporations needed them. But really just taking a chance on myself, knowing that even though I came from a strong corporate background, working since the age of 14, I knew that I could step out and stand on business and actually work my own business and grow it into where it's at today. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also the mom to a 15-year-old. Oh my gosh, she'll be 16 in December. If y'all have any parenting advice, please let me know. I'm open.
Well, hey, I always say in my presentations that, as parents, we don't get a manual. Nobody hands you a manual at birth and say, hey, this is the book. So, hey, I think we're all winging it. And you're winging it from child to child. So
That's true, because you never get the same child twice or even 3 times.
exactly. And so you touched on the AI piece, and I know that you're real big on that. A lot of your content nowadays is about that. And
Mhm.
so what do you find that people are most fearful about when it comes to AI? Because people just have all these different ideas, and some people think it's harmful and detrimental. And then, some of us, we use it
Yeah.
and use it well. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think AI is scary because of how powerful it can be and how powerful it's going to continue to become. And when you think about us as humans and the work that we do, we look at AI as something that could potentially replace us. And anytime that, you're in a position where something could replace you, there's a little bit of tension around that, right? And so I'm a firm believer that the people who learn to leverage AI and use it for whatever niche or business that they're in, those are the people that will actually replace those who fail to embrace it. And yes, there's a lot of ethics and governance around how we use it and why we should use it. I am a firm believer to use it ethically, meaning I'm not just asking it, what does this girl feel about me when she does this, right? That to me is not ethical use. I'm using it for things like creating workflows for the educators that I work with, helping corporations create their workflows, and as well as even softwares like intercompany softwares for themselves. And so when we learn to use it in that way, we actually use it less in a wasteful way. So I think it's something that we all should embrace. I don't know why anyone is hesitating on and getting into AI right now.
Okay. And so when you work with leaders and educators, what are you teaching them in regards to AI?
Yeah. So my work originally started with leadership and culture, which is where my background comes from. And then one of the things that I noted that affected leadership and culture is productivity. Everyone wants to get more work done. Everyone is wearing multiple hats, and you've been in the school system, so a teacher or even a principal wears multiple hats, and burnout is so prevalent. And so when I'm working with them, I'm coming from that lens and thinking, how can I help this person be more productive, more effective, and more efficient while not giving them more work to do? And so when I'm working with administrators, and a lot of the work I do is in central admin, so I'm working with helping them create workflows. Like even if they have a Google workspace, I'm teaching them things like Google Gemini and how to integrate Gemini and all the things that they're doing, helping them with creating, emails, newsletters, actually helping them with communication between interdepartments. And so I'm helping them create those type of workflows. And then even in corporations, I'm helping them with building chat bots. So, how are they have their own little queue, like their customer inquiry chatbots, or even intercompany chatbots that help them with learning and development using things like Notebook LM. And so when I'm working with them, I'm really looking at that lens of what has affected leadership and culture. And majority of the time it is burnout, and helping them with productivity. And so those are the type of tools that we're creating to help them.
Now, I was reading up, you have something called your 4P method.
Yes.
That's related to, I guess, leadership.
Yes.
And so, yeah, tell us more about that.
So there's this funny story in my company. I don't know why I create every method with the letter P, y'all. I don't know what it is. So my team says I'm always pushing P. So the 4P method is really it's in its foundation. It's people. People are always first, no matter what we do. We need people to make this world go around. So usually if there's a people issue, productivity fails. That's the second P. Performance fails, and then people don't feel empowered. So I know empowered starts with the E, but that power is how they take their power back and actually feel like they can actually show up for themselves and advocate for themselves in the workplace. And so that's our 4P method on the leadership and culture side. And then the 4P method for AI, we look at whatever problem that they're having. And so what problem is causing an issue, whether it's efficiency, communication, all those things. Then we create a path. So we create a process, and then we create the path to complete the process. And then finally, I talk them through the amount of productivity hours that they save. And so I'm finding that my educators, or even those that's in central admin, they're saving anywhere from 10 to 20 hours per week with some of the processes that we're putting in place for them.
Okay. And so I know that you're doing consulting, you're basically going into schools, going into corporations, things of that nature. And so I'm going to kind of ask you a deeper question.
Yes.
Especially as it relates to being Women's History Month.
Yes.
Being a woman, especially a Black woman, going into those spaces, what are some of the challenges that you're coming up against?
Absolutely. I mean, skin color is always going to be the number one thing. I am a Black woman, and when they see me, because I like to say I'm kind of unassuming. I just fit right in when I walk into a space, and then when I open my mouth, they're like, "Oh, you're new to this space." So what I mean by that is, I will walk into a space and I look like I belong, right? And so when I look like I belong, people don't expect my credentials. They don't expect that I have, two bachelor's degrees, an MBA, that I'm a certified prompt engineer. I have all these certifications and things like that. They don't expect it. And then once I say who I am and what I'm there to do, there's always that question of, are you qualified enough? And when I tell you, that is always the hardest part. Are you qualified enough? When I know that I'm probably more qualified than many people in my peer group because of just the amount of hours and work that I put in. And so I come up against the skin color piece. I come up against the being female. I took a class where most of the rest of the class was all men, and this was Indian men, and this was an AI class. So you can imagine me being the only woman and then Black woman in that class. I wasn't even expected to do well. And I was top 2. Okay. So with those things, it's like you come into these environments and people aren't expecting you to have as much knowledge. And then when they find out how much we get paid to do what we do, this consulting work, they start to say, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't pay this one person all of this money. I've actually experienced this where I won a sole source contract. And then once they saw me, they saw my face, they said, well, there's a runner up. We're actually going to split it between you two. And I contribute that to being, of course, my skin color as well as me being a woman. And so there's a lot that we come up against as women in this space. But I've learned to just be confident in who I am and what I bring to the table as far as my knowledge and my experience. And that usually gets mouths shut.
So how did you get to that point of having that amount of confidence? Because yeah, we all know that, that's a very it could be very intimidating to walk
Yeah.
into those spaces. And there was a first time for you.
Yes.
And of course, that you had to get that first time out before the second time.
Mhm.
And so what was that like going into it initially?
Man, the first time I was very nervous. I will tell you, I walked into a room where it didn't really look like me. And there were women in the room, but they were like older white women or Asian American women. And so when I first walked into the room, I was very much intimidated. I said, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be here. I went through imposter syndrome in probably like 60 to 90 seconds. I questioned my existence. And then it's something apart, like my faith. I'm really, I tell people all the time, I'm a Jesus girl. And I remember that God put me in that room for a reason. And whether it was to gain experience or it was to actually move forward in the process, he put me in that room for a reason. And so I removed that fear from myself and said, I'm going to show up and do my best no matter what. But I will tell you, I was nervous. I said a lot. My eye contact was all over the place. I was fidgeting. And that was because I was in a space that traditionally we're not accepted as women. But once they heard what my qualifications, the work that I've done, I work with companies like Walmart and Equifax, and they're like, whoa, you've been with all of these companies. I'm like, yes. And that's when it's like, aha, she does belong here. But then it's like, why do I have to say all that to prove that I belong in the room? So it took a minute, I will say that, but that confidence just kept building over time. And can I just say this? I was a little toxic. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna prove to everybody in this room that they should never doubt me. And that's what I do every time I walk into a room.
Mm, I appreciate you sharing all of that. And so I know that, I know a little bit about the work you've done with other speakers, and most of the speakers I know that you've worked with are men.
Mhm.
And so I find that pretty interesting. Like, how are you able to convince these men that you know your stuff and that you can somehow get them on the right path to getting speaking engagements and those opportunities?
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And so that brings another issue to the table where sometimes other women are intimidated by me. And so they don't choose to either work with me or partner with me. And so what men see when I work with men, they see a clear ROI. And here's what I've learned. I have several brothers, I have a lot of nephews, right? I've learned that men just want to know what's the outcomes and what I got to do. All that other stuff, we could talk about that later. So I can clearly explain the ROI of working with me and lay out the plan that we're going to follow. And for men, they can relate to that. And it's not that I'm coming from a place of emotion or fluff or anything. I'm basically saying, this is what you need. This is what I'm going to do. And this is going to be the results. And so the men that I have worked with, they respect that. And I'm not as, how can I say this? I'm not soft in business. I'm a bit of a pit bull. So I'm not soft. And I have found when I work with women, and I love working with women. Let me be very clear here, y'all. I work with women. I have another side of my business where I work with women, but there's a level of communication where when I say something to you, a man, I've noticed that men, they grasp it and they're like, all right, bet this is what we need to do. And women sometimes overthink and have to go through their emotional barrier before they make that decision to move forward. And so that's why a lot of men decide to work with me and trust me. And also I'm very professional, very professional. I make it my business to be about your business. And that's the number one thing. And so I've worked with so many different speakers and so many different speaker brands that have multiple employees. And what I've learned, number one, is the ROI has to be clear and you have to do what you say you're going to do.
What's the toughest thing that you've had to tell a client, whether it be a speaker, whether it be an organization, leadership? What's the toughest conversation that you've had to have with them?
That is actually, it's a very interesting question because I actually just had this conversation recently. I told them that they had to let a part of their brand go. There's a part of their brand that they're very well known for. And I explained to them that it was holding them back and it was limiting them. And when I'm able to showcase like what's on social media, what's happening with their emails, what's happening, just in their engagements when they're speaking, what they're actually getting paid for versus what they want to get paid for. And I said, you have to be able to let this part of your brand go in order for you to excel. And I think back, biblically, sometimes we have to let go of what we know or what we're so used to and what we're familiar with in order for God to bless us with more. Abraham left his whole family behind in order for him to have his own legacy. And so that was probably the toughest conversation because that was a part of their brand they had been tied to for about 10 years. And to see that it was really just draining them and leaking their accounts at this point. And for someone like me to say, look, this is the work I did to audit it. This is what's really happening. And this is the move that you have to make. I think sometimes that's hard to hear because you're so attached to it.
So if I'm a listener and I'm hearing everything that you're talking about and I'm just really admiring what you do and I'm like, man, I want to do that. What would you tell me? What would you be like? Hey, that's great that you want to do this, but you need to be ready for. What would you tell me?
Which part? The speaking, the consulting, the AI, which part?
I would say let's say the consulting.
Yeah, I would say have your belief system in check, like your own personal beliefs and your own professional beliefs. And I say core values too. What are your core values? Because at the end of the day, there's going to be things, and there's going to be things that come up against you and you're kind of like, should I do this? Should I not do it? And if it goes against your core values, if it goes against your personal beliefs, it's probably something you should not be doing. One of my personal beliefs and my professional core values is integrity. And if it compromises my integrity, I can't do it at all. So definitely have a strong belief system personally and professionally. And then just get your reps in. Take on clients, work with people, figure out what it is that you don't like and you do like. And I say don't for a reason. I knew what I loved and what I liked. It was the things that I learned very long and hard what I did not like. And so focus on what you don't like, what doesn't bring you joy, what stresses you out, what takes you away from family. And you know this, when we're traveling, we have travel seasons where we will be on a flight after flight after flight after flight. You have to be able to communicate that to your family and say, listen, I'm going to be gone for 2 or 3 weeks. There was a time I was gone for a whole month, and I have a teenager. So you have to get your reps in, and you have to be willing to understand, like, this. If you're consulting and you're actually working with school districts, or you're working with corporations or with small business owners virtually, you have to understand that the more reps you get in, the more testimonials and reviews you can get, the more work that you will be able to take on. And then lastly is price yourself well. A lot of people always ask me, well, how do I price myself well? Listen, the easiest way you can do it is whatever your monthly bills, expenses, all that is, and then multiply it times 3, figure out your pricing from there. That is the easiest way I can say. If I can have 3 times my living and my professional expenses, I will be good. Anything outside of that, that's just gravy. So I would say that would be my suggestion if someone wanted to get into what I'm doing. Oh, bonus. Be a continuous learner. Yes. Be a continuous learner. Have a coach, have a mentor. There's so many free resources. Google provides so many free resources. You can find classes online. Udemy is another place, Coursera. Like, always be a professional learner. That's what I say.
Looking at your background and everything, I noticed that it seems like you're one that's willing to try a lot of different things, a lot of different approaches.
Mhm.
And oftentimes people are very hesitant to do those sorts of things. And so what's your philosophy? What leads you to having that type of approach?
I want to die empty. That's it. I want to die empty. I don't want to go to my grave with my dreams, my desires, my goals. I want to die empty. I want to be that person where that I was able to take a risk, but also I took the time to take a risk. Because there's the difference between someone who likes to do everything and never stay put. I will stay put. So I have this desire to just die empty. When I go to, when God calls me home, I don't want to just go to my grave with all my dreams and my desires. And so every day I wake up and I say to myself, God, use me in the best way possible, blow my mind today, and allow me to release this gift that you gave to me to those who need it. And that's just my philosophy. I'm going to die empty.
And with everything that you're doing, of course, there's a personal side to it. You
Mhm.
have a personal life, you have a professional life. And how has that been trying to, manage being a mom and, having a teenager, and then at the same time, as a consultant, you're having to seek business.
Mhm.
And so just kind of touch on those things, like how what challenges, or what type of toll has it maybe taken on you, and how have you managed it?
I will tell you this, you will not have a dating life. You will not have a dating life, especially when you're growing a business. And let me say this, if you are not in an established relationship, prior to you really growing your business, anyone that's coming into that season of your life, it will be hard for them to understand why you need to work late, why you need to do this, or why you need to have this conversation at this time of night or this time of morning. And I work with international clients too. So sometimes 3 a.m. is the best time for me to talk to a
Mhm.
client, right? And so I really didn't have a dating life. And so that really affected me because I felt alone. I didn't feel lonely, but I felt alone because I didn't have someone to share it with. But also on the other side of being a mom is like sometimes I miss things because if I am in a travel season, I might have to miss, an event or an engagement or a parent teacher meeting, or I might even miss an email because I'm just moving around so much. I missed that the teacher emailed me at 9 o'clock in the morning, and here we are at 9 o'clock at night, and now I'm just now seeing it. And so even as I'm speaking, like if a teacher calls or an administrator calls for my daughter and I'm speaking or doing work, I'm missing that call. And so I have to rely a lot on family. And it's hard because you have to explain to your child, like, hey, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this to build a legacy. But at the same time, it's taking away time from them. And so throughout this process, I've had to learn, like, okay, me and my daughter are going to have weekly dates. You know, when I'm at home, we're having weekly dates. We're going to do something fun, or we'll go to like a store. I'll let her ball out in the snack section, right? We have weekly Bible studies. So we're, connecting over the Bible and just different things like that, and just daily check-ins. We have a notepad where we're sharing things, like, because sometimes I will forget that we need body wash. And homegirl be like, Mama, we need body wash. Like, can you get some mouthwash? Right? Like, so it's things like that where I'm learning. I'm also neurodivergent. So I have ADHD and autism. So I'm learning how to navigate life with that, as well as being a mom. And then I'm recently engaged. So it's
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm just like, there's a lot always happening, but what keeps me grounded is communication. I'm constantly telling people, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at. This is what's happening. I'm not going to be here, or I need to stay up late, or I need to go to bed early. And it's tough. I can't lie. And I think that the world or society expects women to be stronger than we are. And that means we mask a lot. We cry in the corner, or we cry in the car or in the shower, because it's a lot to handle when you're navigating all these things. And so I will say my relationship with God, my family has been a big part of my support system and making sure that I'm able to do all these things. I also like to see people online like you and other speakers and other consultants that work in this space, and how you guys will share your struggles, because they think we don't struggle. What is that about? They really think we don't struggle. They think we just eating all day, but they don't see the email and the calling, the sitting in the airport for hours. Your flight is delayed yet again. Like, they don't see all that. They don't see the games we miss, the shows we miss, the sleep we miss out on, right? Like, they don't see all that. And so they sensationalize what we do, without realizing there's a sacrifice. And so I get motivated when y'all share me, like, oh, I struggled. I was in the airport for 12 hours today. And I'm like, ooh, I had that before. So it's a combination of things, but I will tell you it's tough. And even as women who are natural nurturers and we have kids, it's even tougher because we want to be always nurturing our kids.
Yeah, I know what you mean by that, because as far as people seem to think like, hey, we just balling out and everything is going our way, and no, it's a grind.
It's a grind.
For me, I don't want to say that it's overwhelming, but at times it can be overwhelming.
At times it can be.
Yeah, because I guess I come from a point of view like, golly, I'm doing what I dream of doing, and so I don't want to complain about it, because I know there's a whole bunch of people out there that are doing things that they don't dream of. And I'm like, man, I've been there before, so I know that sucks. Yeah. But at the same time, just like for me, for example, just having to wait on clients, sometimes their processes are slow. And so I'm waiting on something, I'm waiting to get paid.
On the Lord. Now I got to wait on y'all.
Yeah, exactly. So those are some of the challenging things, and it's not predictable either. Mm-hmm. And so can definitely relate. And that's probably the thing, is that it can be very unpredictable, and so you have to really kind of check your anxiety, somehow be able to work with that, because yes, it can put you in very anxious situations.
Yes, it can. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you shared that, because one of the things I would ask you is like, how do you, and look at me asking you a question.
It's conversation. So yeah, go
But
for it.
how do you even like navigate the in between, because we have clients who we do have to wait on to sometimes pay or say yes or whatever the case may be. How are you navigating that in between time?
It's tough. It's tough. I thank God we have AI to kind of get some insights on how to best approach a client and how
Mhm.
to word things correctly. Because yeah, that's a struggle that I've had, is just having to navigate that wait time and understanding their processes and making sure that I'm not rubbing the client the wrong way or
Mhm.
being too needy or whatever, trying to get clarity on the situation. And so it just depends. I've gotten to a point where I can kind of tell where, like in my gut, like, okay, I think it might be a good time to maybe give them a call instead of
Yeah.
emailing them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those are just things that through experience that I've
Mhm.
gotten better at. But yeah, it's a tough thing, especially when you're kind of waiting on it and you need it.
Yes.
And so, yes, it's very, very tricky. I think what you mentioned earlier, just being professional, I think that's the most important thing. If you can present yourself as a professional, then oftentimes people, especially in the space that I'm working in right now,
Mhm.
I'm working with a lot of nonprofits, and they tend to be very soft-hearted, and so
Yes.
they don't seem to get as annoyed or anything
Mhm.
compared to other organizations. They don't get
Mhm.
as annoyed and upset or offended or whatever. They're just like, okay, we understand, and oh, we're so sorry. And yeah, I appreciate that, because my thing is, look, you're going to get your services on time. I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to be there early. We're going to try to end on time, and everything is going to be a professional
And you're
experience.
gonna show out.
Exactly. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. And so, yeah, I want to be treated the same way. So,
Absolutely.
mhm.
Absolutely. Let me you mentioned something that I think I find with a lot of speakers or even business owners, they struggle with this. Why do you think people are so afraid to pick up the phone and call?
I think it's just intimidating. You have to really gotta understand yourself, understand your triggers. Like me, I'm naturally an introvert.
Me
And yeah,
too. People
yeah.
don't think I am, but I am.
Growing up, everybody's like, oh, he's shy. My family he's shy. So they're probably just amazed that I'm on stages across the country speaking.
Mhm.
But yeah, I understand myself. And at the end of the day, I understand the big picture. You have to zoom out and be like, okay, this is what needs to get done. And these people don't care about me that much. So I'm going to just pick up the phone and give them a call.
Yes.
They don't know me from Adam, just like if somebody calls me, I don't know them that well.
Yes.
And yeah, if I pick up the phone and maybe they're disturbing me, I might be disturbed for a second or two. And I'll be like, hey, call me later or whatever. And I'm moving on. And so
Yeah.
that's how I look at it when I'm calling someone else. Like,
Yeah.
okay, if they're annoyed, they're going to be annoyed for 2 seconds and then they're
Yeah.
moving on. So,
Yeah.
but generally they're not, because I try to approach it in a way that, I'm empathetic to their situation. Like, hey, I know you're very busy. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. And then I actually keep my word. If
Yeah.
they're like, hey, I'm not interested, I'm moving on.
Yes.
So,
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I find like even with some of the speakers that I work with, they're so afraid to pick up the phone and call because of, past experiences or just not understanding themselves or feeling confident on the phone. And so when I have walked some speakers through like making their own phone calls, which is, because they get so used to people calling them and they pick it up, right? Because they might send an email. But when it's like I actually have to call and have a conversation, it's like it's a natural thing. Keep your words. If you say you're not going to take up too much of their time, keep your word and be precise and say what you need to say. And so I'm glad that you share that, because that usually is one of the number one reasons why speakers don't make as much money as they should, because they One is always systems, but the number, like I will tell you, like they do not pick up the phone. So I encourage everybody, just pick up the phone.
Yes, whatever your business is, I would say pick up the phone. And it's definitely something I've done a lot more of this year
Yeah.
because with the technology and everything, with the email constraints, you
Hmm.
could have your email system set up perfectly and your emails aren't getting through.
They're not get. Yep. Yep.
And
School
so
districts are
yeah.
getting better at their, security protocols, and I've noticed it. So our
Mhm.
emails aren't getting through. So you're absolutely right. And then AI. There's so many like auto bots calling or these AI agents answering the phone. People are actually excited sometimes to talk to a real human being. So
Mhm.
yes, that I could talk about all day.
Mhm. And so I know that you help people conquer their ish.
Mhm.
And so what is ish?
Yes. So Ish actually started probably about 2019. And I used to, first off, it started as a cuss word, y'all. Okay. It started as a cuss word. If you know what I'm talking about, you already know. I ain't got to say it. But I was really just like, what is happening with me? What is going on with me? Why am I not able to get past this certain like barrier or this point in my life? And I had to say to myself, like, I have to identify what the root cause of the issue is. And I find that many people don't know what the root cause is. Many people are only looking at it surface level. They're not going deep enough. And so ish, the I stands for identify. So we do that
Mm.
deeper work to identify what it is that's going on and why you're actually showing up the way you are. So sometimes with leaders, what I do is I teach them about attachment styles and leadership. And so, depending on their attachment style, it could affect how they show up as a leader and even lead others who have maybe different attachment styles. And so, I walk them through that. And then we talk about interrupting it so we can shift it. So, how do we shift the narrative, shift and reframe? Meaning, what plans or processes or paths do we need to put in place? And usually that's internal work. So if you know your attachment style is someone who's more anxious, what causes you to be anxious? Why are you in an anxious place? And how can you tackle it in the moment instead of letting it linger and then build and grow into a bigger issue? And then the H is always just honor. Honor yourself, honor the people around you, and honor the process because you will not evolve overnight. I'm sorry. I know I'm breaking people's hearts when I say that you will not change overnight. It takes time. Okay. And so teaching them how to honor the process in the process. And so what does that look like for them? How do they check in with themselves? How do they check in with their teams? How do they even check in with some of the processes that we put in place to help them? And so that's what Ish is all about. When you're able to conquer your ish, you're really able to show up as a better you. And conquering your ish sometimes is removing the lies, the labels, and the limitations that
Mm.
you have placed on yourself or society has placed on you. And when you remove that, you can really conquer your ish. And so I'm very passionate about that inner work because I find that when we can trust ourselves and we can believe in ourselves and we can be confident, we show up way better. And so I'm happy to do that work with leaders.
What part of ish do you feel like people struggle with the most? Is there a consistent out of the I, S, and H?
Yeah.
Like, when do you feel is most, I guess, prominent?
Yeah. I think the shift between the I and the S, right? Because even though we're identifying, we're also choosing to interrupt. So it's kind of like it's like two eyes, but it's only one. So even though we're identifying, because you have to be aware that there is a problem in order for you to actually address the problem. So once we are identifying what the problem is and choosing to interrupt it, now we're going into shifting. And it's like, how do I stop being who has protected me my whole life? How do I
Mhm.
stop being who has protected me in business? How do I stop, especially for women, how do I take off my masculine mask that I've had to wear this whole time in leadership and my whole career? When Susie was over here doing what she was doing, I had to show up 10 times harder. How do I shift from that identity that I built. And I found as a Black woman in corporate, people automatically looked at me like the angry Black woman. As soon as I had a problem with something, I was the angry Black woman. And it's like, how do you even remove that trauma that you've experienced in order to be a better you so you can show up for your people better? That's usually the hardest part to unpack, because people have to agree to be real with themselves about what the issue is, and then be real that it's going to take hard work to overcome it. And so that's usually the biggest shift, or the biggest area where we focus the most.
I find that so interesting because I participate in a men's mental health group here in Austin, and the facilitator has talked a lot about taking off the mask and using the same terminology that you're using in our identity. And so it's super interesting just to hear how, you know, your approach and then his approach, they're pretty much the same. Of course, you're dealing with different genders. But man, yeah, that's just real. And it's a process, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. And I think sometimes, you know, people, you know, they want that, like you mentioned earlier, they want it to happen overnight, but it's not. It's, you know, I questioned it the other day. I'm like, do people truly heal? You know, is healing something that's finite, or is it something that goes on and on? What are your thoughts on that?
One, I believe that people are never truly healed. I believe that healing is an evolving state. It's like, once we get past one thing, it basically opens the door for another thing. And I call them triggers sometimes, right? So once we are triggered here and we heal from this and we go to the next level, something else is going to trigger us, and we have to heal from that and then go to the next level. And so I don't believe that we're ever truly healed in a sense of we get to a healed state, but I do believe we go through different phases of healing from things that triggers us. And when you recognize that, you're actually able to give yourself more grace in the process of healing. And one of the exercises that I do with, I have a women's community. So one of the exercises that I do is I ask them, I'm like, write down every title that you've ever had since birth. And you know what many people will say? Girl, mom, sister, aunt, cousin, you know, supervisor, manager. But a lot of people always forget to include that one time somebody called them stupid and it stuck. That one time somebody called them shy and it stuck. That one time that somebody called them something that went against their identity, yet it stayed so long, it became a part of their identity. And I talk to them, I say, when you're able to strip yourself of that, that's when you start to really heal the things that trigger you. Because I was that woman in corporate where they would say you're the angry Black woman, and I would get upset because I'm like, I am not angry. Y'all ain't seen angry. That's exactly what I used to say. And you know why I came from that? Because I had a rough childhood. And I knew they had not seen angry. But I had to realize I had to heal from that. I don't want y'all to see angry. Y'all don't want to see angry. So it's, you know, I do believe that people heal in stages or in phases. And as you grow older, you're going to keep healing from everything.
Getting close to the end. And so I think this is what you just mentioned is man, is so good. And so if you could leave people with one message tonight, what would it be?
Oh Lord. One message? Oh my goodness.
Okay, or let's say three. It could be three messages, three takeaways from everything that you talked about.
I could definitely leave people with one message. This has actually been the core theme of my year. And so this, if you've seen me talk on any podcast or if you've seen me post on social media, this is going to be the core theme of my year, because I believe this is what has helped me as well as those in leadership that I work with. Is to establish your belief system. And I'm not saying, you know, oh, you believe in whatever. I'm saying when things get tough, when life challenges you, when the enemy tries to bring you down, whoever you believe in, you could believe in this mouse for all I care. Establish your belief system, something that you can go to when things are bad, good, and ugly. And you can say, thank you, or heal me, or be with me, or be present with me, or deliver me, or whatever it is. You have something you can hold on to, because if you do not have a belief system, people will walk all over you. Your emotions will walk all over you. Your emotions will cost you people and money and time and resources if you don't have a strong belief system to stay in check. That is the number one thing I want to leave people with for this year. If I was to leave this earth tomorrow, my message to you would be to have a belief system, because it's through your beliefs you are actually going to be able to win at being you and actually be able to make moves in this world. And so that would be my final message.
Wow. Coach Rocky, there you have it. Her words of wisdom. Coach, I thank you so much for coming on tonight. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for this platform. Just to give you your flowers, I've seen it evolve over time, and I'm just super proud of you for continuing to doing it and giving us a voice, and even to dedicate this month to the women in the community, those who you work with or you've seen out in social media, and to believe we've never actually physically met each other, but to know that we continue to motivate each other. I'm just so proud of you, and just thank you so much for what you're doing in this space and bringing me back on, of course. And I just got to give you your flowers. This is awesome.
Oh, I appreciate it. That means a lot. And so with that, folks, change happens one person at a time, 1 second at a time. Let's go.